welcome to the Beacon broadcast. This is episode 087. It's June 16th, 2025. You can call me Kodax, and I'll be your host through this week's episode. So I usually start off with purchases, but I've got none to talk about this week. I don't really have any games on the immediate horizon releasing, which is, kind of a relief so I can focus on, my massive gargantuan backlog of games. But in the meantime, I have been continuing to play Fantasy Life on my Nintendo Switch 2, which I'm still enjoying. I did beat the final boss of the game, but that's sort of just almost the beginning of a game like Fantasy Life. So now there's this whole new end game, quests and goals and different tasks to do, and I still want to level up all the different lives and jobs and things like that. So I'm gonna, keep chipping away at Fantasy Life in my spare time. And Zenless Zone Zero had its 2.0 update last week, and it brought with it quite a chunk of brand new content for the game. So I have been playing through most of that. I think I've largely kind of caught up with all the new content thus far. Thankfully, it wasn't like an overwhelming amount, although it did, probably take me 10 hours or so to play the new story, play all the new events that are going on right now. There's some new characters, plenty more on the horizon. Of all the Hoyoverse games, this game, a lot of the other games, I can go like a long time without getting new characters in the game. And, to get new characters, you have to have this like premium currency. You can earn some of it for free in the game, and then you can also buy it outright, or you can get like this $5 monthly pass that gives you a little bit every day you log in, and that's really the best value, bang for your buck. And so that's the only thing I ever spend in the game. I will do the $5 monthly pass in these three Hoyoverse games that I play: Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, and Honkai Star Rail. And, in Honkai Star Rail and Genshin, I can go quite a while without pulling a new character. But Zenless Zone Zero, they're doing a really good job about making me want to use my currency as soon as I've got it on, an upcoming character. Almost every patch, they make me want to pull for someone. And in the other games, I'm pretty, like I said, I don't pull that often. I kind of wait until there's someone I really want or need for my team composition. But, Zenless Zone Zero, it's constantly like, hey, yeah, this person, you really need to get that character. They're going to be a great fit for your team. Like, it speaks to me that way. I did get one of the new S-rank characters in the 2.0 update. They've been a lot of fun to play. I like their play style. It's kind of totally built around sort of countering enemy attacks. And I kind of sucked using it at first, but I've slowly been getting better at it, so I'm proud of myself. Zenless Zone Zero 2.0 update. It's been a good time. Honestly, if someone put a gun to my head and say, hey, you got to drop 2 of these Hoyoverse games or, the world blows up, I think I'd stick with ZZZ. I'm just enjoying it the most out of the 3 games. I've actually been really contemplating quitting Genshin Impact, quitting Honkai Star Rail, and, I'm having a tough time doing it. Genshin Impact has a new update coming out, and there's only 2 updates left in the Genshin Impact cycle before it moves on to its next major game version, and I was wondering if maybe I should just call it quits, maybe revisit the game in a couple of years. But I don't know, man, it's got its hooks into me, and it is kind of hard to step away. I understand when people say, these games are addictive, and you feel like if, you don't play, you miss out, not only on the free currency, but free events, free weapons, free special things that, if you weren't there, you can never get it. So, that's my current struggle. But yeah, more and more I've been contemplating stepping away from Genshin, stepping away from Honkai Star Rail, because I do feel like it does monopolize my free time for gaming a little more than I'd like, juggling all 3 of these games. And I don't know, I feel like just doing ZZZ might be the right move for me. It might take me a little while to work up to the point where I'm actually willing to go, okay, not logging in again or anytime soon. I had the same experience with World of Warcraft many years ago, and that was an addiction like no other. And to step away from that game, it took a really long time, a lot of false starts, slowly scaling back, like, okay, I'm no longer going to be involved in these weekly commitments of doing raids with all these people, so step back there, just play more casually. And then eventually I was like, you know what, I don't need this game anymore. And, my life was a lot better for it. And I don't think I'm on the level of, World of Warcraft with Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact. But when you combine all three games together, it does start to approach that level of territory. Thankfully, I don't have those commitments where I have to be online at 5 p.m. because 20 other people are relying on me to be there, like I did with World of Warcraft. But it is still a time-consuming thing, As for upcoming events, I've got Anime Expo, San Diego Comic-Con, both of those in July, one early, one later. And then in August, finally, my last kind of big event for the year, the Pokemon World Championships in Anaheim. They just released a bunch of information about the Pokemon World Championships last night, this morning. They updated the website, updated the FAQ, and kind of detailed all the activities and things that are going to be going on. There's not a firm schedule for a lot of stuff, but I'm really excited to go back to the Pokemon World Championships. When I went in 2017, it was definitely a more low-key affair. It was just on the precipice of really kind of exploding. And from what I understand, since the pandemic, the World Championships have just become like a mini Pokemon convention. There's panels, autograph signings, and just lots of activities to do, even if you're not a competitor but just an attendee. So I'm really looking forward to the Pokemon World Championships. But before then, I gotta get through Anime Expo and San Diego Comic-Con. Anime Expo is coming up real fast on me. Not a huge gaming presence this year. There's some cool panels, but as far as guests go, there's really only one, official Anime Expo guest that's in gaming, and that would be Naoki Yoshida, who is, responsible for the rebirth of Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO, and also a big part as the main producer of Final Fantasy XVI, which I'm a big fan of that game. So I did get an autograph signing for him, so I'm looking forward to attending that. And, maybe some other surprises will come up for Anime Expo before then. During last week's episode, I ran out of time when covering all the events and goings-on, so I wanted to briefly touch on my experience at IGN Live and the Death Stranding 2 World Tour game premiere event. So this year, IGN Live returned to the Magic Box venue in downtown LA to host their now annual event. For their second year, the event was only 2 days long instead of 3, and I think this was an improvement, a good change. The price of tickets went down, and instead of padding the event with fluff, they were able to make a tighter and bigger show. The show also grew in size. Instead of primarily being on the first floor, the show now expanded greatly, taking advantage of the second floor of the venue, and it was full of additional games to play and freebies to pick up. Event sponsors gave out free packaged brownies, salted caramel Butterfingers, and Feastables, from free drinks from Polar Seltzer. 5 Hour Energy was back this year with more giveaways too, but they were a little more stingy and would only let you take one per day. Free food and game demos are cool, but the real reason I show up to these events is to try and get some games signed. Compared to last year, there was a bit less on my docket, which was okay, but there was one big thing I had to do, and that was to get the cast of Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, who were doing multiple panels at the show on Saturday, to sign my copy of the game. Long story short, I was successful in getting everyone who appeared to sign my game. Ben Starr, who played Verso, Jennifer English, who played Mael, Kirsty Ryder, who played Lune, Shayla Nix, who played Ciel, Richard Keeble, who played Monaco, and Maxine Cazorla, who played Esquier. Not surprisingly, Charlie Cox of Daredevil fame and Andy Serkis of Lord of the Rings fame were not in attendance. But I really wasn't expecting them to be there. These guys will charge $200-$300 to get their signature at fan conventions and things. But it would have been pretty cool if they were there. Fun fact about Maxine, he's not only the English voiceover actor for Esquier, he's also the French voice actor. And he also did all the mocap for all the male characters in the game. Out of all the voice casts, he's the only person who actually works for the company that produced the game, Sandfall Interactive. And everyone else, they were just hired to do the voice for the Western English-speaking territories. So getting everybody was a bit of an ordeal, as I was only to nab 3 of them in the morning at their first panel. I nabbed another one of them who I bumped into while wandering around the show floor a couple hours later, and the last 2 at their final panel of the day. Those last two signatures were a bit dicey, and I won't lie, my heart rate kind of went up. But then finally that sweet wave of relief washed over me when it was over with. I was able to get one other game signed. This one was a lot easier. Matt Nava, the art director of Journey and the creative director of Abzu, The Pathless, and the upcoming Sword of the Sea, was there with a small interview, and I was able to get my copy of Abzu signed by him. It was previously signed by the composer Austin Wintory, who also worked on Journey and Abzu and Sword of the Sea and The Pathless. On day 2 of IGN Live, I had one thing I wanted to get signed, and it wasn't a game. It was my brother's copy of the 1997 Disney film Rocket Man, starring Harlan Williams. My brother had already got Harlan to sign the DVD cover several years ago during one of his comedy shows, but this time I was after the screenwriter of the film, Craig Mazin. In recent years, Craig has become well known for his work on the incredible Chernobyl miniseries on HBO, and most recently his work on The Last of Us TV show. Craig was, of course, attending IGN Live as part of a panel on the making of The Last of Us TV show. Once the panel ended, I could see Craig was trying to make a quick exit before he was swarmed by Last of Us fans, but I happened to catch his eye before he made his exit, and told him this movie is one of my brother and I's favorite films, which got a smile and a laugh out of him before he signed it and made his way out the side. All in all, the weekend was a huge success at IGN Live. I got a lot of free candy, and everything I wanted signed I was able to make happen. I hope IGN continues the show again next year. But my adventures in Los Angeles were not over yet. In the afternoon on Sunday, I made the trek from the Magic Box to the Orpheum Theater with some friends to attend the Death Stranding 2 world premiere event. The theater opened up at 6 p.m. for attendees to find their seats. On the stage was a screen while we waited for the event to begin. They had a camera broadcasting the red carpet area where VIP guests and panelists were schmoozing and taking photos. At one point, I got to see Death Stranding and Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima's hair and makeup stylist comb his hair. Talk about riveting content. Those scheduled to attend the event as panelists included the game director, of course, Hideo Kojima, actress Elle Fanning, actor Troy Baker, actress Shioli Kutsuna, and composer Woodkid, and it was moderated by Jeff Keighley, because of course it was. It was not a huge surprise to me that Elle Fanning ended up not being available to attend. Instead, we got a brief pre-recorded clip of her apologizing for not being there. Oh well. Instead, the rest of the panelists discussed their time working on the game. We got to see a few new clips of the various characters in action, specifically a look at Elle's mysterious character, Tomorrow, doing some pretty crazy stuff. After the clips, we got to see our first look at live gameplay demonstrations, first of the open world traversal, and then a few sections of combat, including a boss battle. Personally, I was not super impressed by the combat. It still looks quite clunky, and the going in and out of menus to swap and adjust weapons is pretty dated at this point. The focus of the game is not about combat though, but instead about connecting and delivering, as Kojima reminded the audience. The game itself is an absolute stunner though, and the team at Kojima Productions has really outdone themselves with the photorealism that the game produces. On our way out, they handed everybody who attended a sleek, thick cardstock envelope with some decals of logo designs from the game inside. The whole thing is on YouTube, so you can check it out for yourself, but I was glad to have attended and enjoyed my time at the event. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming of more layoffs. Sony is back at it with another round of layoffs at a beloved PlayStation studio. Known for classic games like the Siphon Filter series, Uncharted Golden Abyss on PlayStation Vita, and Days Gone on PS4 and PS5, Bend Studio has been around for some time. Their most recent game, Days Gone, was released in 2019, and beyond a PS5 port of the game, which was only released earlier this year, the studio has been very quiet. It was reported that Sony turned down a pitch for Days Gone 2, and has instead had the studio working on a live service game. Over the last few years, key members of the studio have departed, including some that jumped ship over to Sucker Punch to work on Ghost of Tsushima 2. Which I think is Ghost of Yotai, not Ghost of Tsushima 2, and I can't even pronounce that correctly, my bad. Anyways, well, earlier this year, that live service game was canceled, and the studio has instead moved on to yet another project. It would be hilarious if it ends up being Days Gone 2. If only Sony had let them make it when they wanted to originally, that game would probably be already out or nearly out. And now, as reported by Bloomberg, Bend Studio is laying off 40 people, which is nearly 1/3 of the studio staff. So we're going from 120 down to 80 people now. At this point, I would not expect to hear about a new game at Bend Studio any point during the remainder of the PS5's life cycle. It could be eventually we get a cross-gen title with PlayStation 6. If they even survive that long, I'm really worried about the health of the studio. Here's what Sony had to say about the layoffs. Earlier this year, Bend Studio wrapped development on a live service concept. After careful consideration, we chose not to move forward with it as the team shifts focus to its next project. We've made strategic changes to better position the studio for long-term success. As part of this transition, a workforce reduction has taken place at the studio. This decision was not made lightly, and we are extremely grateful for the meaningful contributions of all those impacted. Bend Studio has been a valued part of PlayStation Studios for decades, and we remain confident in its future and creative direction. So at least there's some optimism from Sony there. Whether it's just PR speak or genuine, I'm not really sure. I personally am really hoping they can bounce back from these cancellations and, failed starting of projects and make something to show the world that Bend Studio is here for the long haul. For our final story of the day, we are going to look at the record-breaking sales of the Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo announced that in its first 4 days of sales, the Nintendo Switch 2 sold more than 3.5 million units globally, which makes it the fastest-selling Nintendo console ever released. 136 years later, Nintendo has still got it. Nintendo Switch 2 sales are so good out of the gate, that they are outpacing the original Nintendo Switch by 2-1. Nintendo doesn't come out and say it themselves, but based on their statements, this would also make Nintendo Switch 2 the fastest-selling console of all time, beating current market rivals Sony and Microsoft. PlayStation 5 sold 2.5 million units in around the same period of time when it launched. The question is, can Nintendo keep stock plentiful enough to keep up with the demand or not? In the week and a half since release, I have only heard of a couple major restocks on websites like Walmart and Best Buy, GameStop too, I think, in store, and I'm not sure about, other store retail situations. I do know that the Nintendo store in San Francisco and New York have been doing regular restocks and even allow for people to reserve a pass for a guaranteed purchase opportunity. So if you are in the Bay or the Cité, they may be your best bet. End transmission.